relentless power. Ferocious, roaring winds.
My goodness, the wind has just been insane.
Sledgehammer waves of water. These are the most devastating hurricanes of all time.
A monster storm right now.
Including a Cat 4 buzzsaw that terrorized a storm chaser.
When I was in there, I'm going like, this is how I'm going to die.
Others loaded with catastrophic storm surge.
Water is about 160 times more powerful than wind.
And those that altered landscapes forever.
It was a storm that flooded the city, and we weren't prepared for it.
Winds for the hour, 50, 60 miles per hour.
We're counting down the top 10 worst hurricanes. Since 2004, hurricanes have accounted for over $300 billion in damage in the U.S. Hello, I'm meteorologist Jim Cantori, and I was in all of those and saw the destruction firsthand. Now you're going to get a front row seat to the worst hurricanes imaginable. On average, there's about 6 Atlantic hurricanes that form each year. In both 2004 and 2005, there were 6 that hit the U.S. alone, killing over 2,000 people. We know that tropical terror is far-reaching and can be felt along the entire coastline, from Maine to Texas, packing a 1-2 punch of wind and water.
Hurricanes are Mother Nature's greatest storm. At their peak, they're as strong as almost every tornado, but over a tremendously larger area. So there's so much energy generated in a hurricane that it doesn't compare to anything else that Mother Nature produces.
Along with the strongest tornadoes, the strongest hurricanes rank up there among the most powerful, destructive, deadliest forces of weather.
At any instant, there's enough energy in a hurricane to power the world 200 times over.
Every time one of them happens and somebody lives through it, they think nothing could be worse, and they stay and die.
Our countdown criteria was determined by the Weather Channel's acclaimed hurricane experts and takes into consideration the combination of deadliest, costliest, and most intense storms. We're kicking off our countdown with the strongest hurricane to hit the U.S. since Andrew in 1992. It may have been small in size, but it delivered a knockout blow. At number 10, Charley. And you see, as bad as it is here, look at this. It's about 4 times as bad up to the north. Friday, August 13th, 2004. Hurricane Charley, a Cat 4 mighty might, blasts the southwest Florida coastline with winds up to 150 miles per hour.
The very unusual attribute of Charley was the size of the eye. Little tiny eye. It really made the system more like a tornado than a hurricane, very much like a figure skater bringing the arms in and spinning faster. That's what made the winds so fast, but not over a very large area.
The maximum winds extended out only 7 miles from the center. But if you were in that path, you were in big trouble. Melissa Baldwin was a manager at a hotel right on Charlotte Harbor in Punta Gorda and witnessed Charley's fury firsthand.
There was a lot of screaming because of what it actually, that's one sound that I'll never forget. The actual wind, it was like a train coming through that building. The whole front of the hotel, the awnings fell onto the guest cars and also employees' cars. Power lines were down. There was a lot of windows that were broken.
The experience left Baldwin unable to speak for 2 weeks after the hurricane.
We built our top 10 list on the strength of the storm and the cost of the storm. In modern times, we haven't had many Category 4 storms coming ashore. Because we have that confluence of cost and strength, it just edged into the top 10, just past many great hurricanes of the past.
After landfall, Charley continued to wreak havoc as it traversed the central Florida peninsula, going over Orlando and maintaining hurricane intensity as the center moved off the northeast coast near Daytona Beach. Damage in the U.S. was estimated around $15 billion. Punta Gorda was ground zero for Charley. That's where experienced storm chaser Jim Edds found himself as it was barreling in, with nowhere to hide.
I settled on the downwind side of an eye doctor's office, and it was all mayhem. It was like somebody taking the town and sending it through a big grinder and then blowing it right by me. The first real scary moment is a big old piece of sheet metal comes flying overhead and crashes in the building across the street. I'm going, wow, you don't want to get out in that, because if you went out into that, you were going to get hit by something and you were going to die. It was crazy. I saw a roof blowing down the street. I saw the sign across the street get blown out. I look at that video and I go like, I hope I never get in that position again. It's too scary. I thought I was an experienced hurricane chaser. I've been in 1s, 2s, and 3s, and you get kind of cocky. You go, yeah, I got this wired. But until you've seen something like a strong 4, you don't know what you're getting into. In Charley, I felt like I was not going to make it out of there, but that's how I was going to die, and that was a bad feeling.
Amazing footage, and amazingly, only 10 people were killed in the U.S. by Charley. But that's not the case for our next entry, which was the deadliest to ever hit the Northeast. At number 9, the Great New England Hurricane of 1938.
People really believed hurricanes did not come to New England, and children remember asking their parents if they'd hear of a typhoon or hurricane, and someone would say, "Don't worry about it, dear, they don't come to New England."
But on September 21st, 1938, a Category 3 roared across Long Island and into New England with catastrophic results.
First of all, people didn't know it was coming. They didn't even put the warning up until after the center had already come ashore by about an hour and a half. Second of all, because it was moving so fast, it maintained much more strength than storms normally do when they get that far in the Northeast.
The 1938 hurricane is one of the benchmark weather events in the history of the Northeast United States because of the speed and ferocity with which it came in and the amount of loss of life and destruction that it caused.
It was responsible for nearly 600 deaths and 1,700 injuries. Almost 9,000 buildings were destroyed, along with over 2,600 boats.
The same country clubs where just weeks before at Labor Day there had been wonderful end-of-summer dances became the places where they took the bodies, and they became the morgues.
Providence, Rhode Island experienced sustained winds of 100 miles per hour with gusts to 125. Across southern New England, there was extensive damage to roofs, trees, and crops. Widespread power outages lasted several weeks in some areas. Downed power lines resulted in disastrous fires in New London and Mystic, Connecticut.
This hurricane not only had strong winds that caused widespread swaths of damage, but it also had storm surge of tremendous magnitude and gigantic waves on top of that.
The center made landfall at the time of astronomical high tide. So you had those waves on top of the storm surge up to 15 feet. Downtown Providence was submerged under a storm tide of almost 20 feet during rush hour.
It was a terrible situation. You had people drowning in the streets. People didn't know where their loved ones were. People at home didn't know if anyone was going to come home. Some can't swim and don't make it. They're never seen again.
The 1938 hurricane is one of the worst case hurricane scenarios that we have on the coastline because it affects such a populated area in such a big way. And all these places are so much more populated and there's so much more wealth today than there was in 1938 that we're talking about one of the top storms in terms of the cost if it were to happen again.
Coming up on our countdown of the top 10 worst hurricanes.
Goodness gracious!
Another storm that ravaged the Northeast with a wallop of water.
A wave came through and just broke down the back door and the house started filling up with water.
And later, the 3 catastrophic Cat 5s that made landfall in the U.S. during the 20th century.